What's up, everybody? Welcome to the newest episode of Demo Day, the podcast for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, where we demystify the culture of joining one of the top accelerator, incubator, or VC programs from around the world. I'm your host, Sean Goldfaden, CEO of Coefficient Labs, and on today's episode, we'll be interviewing Ben Smith, managing partner of Chancebending Ventures and the host to the Chancebending Podcast. Ben has built and sold several venture-backed startups, including Blaze, which was acquired by video behemoth Vobel. He's one of the first 200 employees at Google and helped bring YouTube to market in Los Angeles. Currently, Ben invests and advises in dozens of startups in the US and international markets. On today's show, we'll cover the keys to intelligently growing your network, why teamwork is one of the most important skills for all winning founders, and what is the real difference between A-plus team members and the rest of the pack. Also, Coefficient Labs is giving away a $10,000 growth hacking package for one VC and one founder that leaves a rating and a review on the Apple Podcast. So if you're watching this on our website or currently listening to it on Apple or Spotify, go run over to Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. Please, 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 please. Thank you. Without further ado, let's get into Demo Day. Ben, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Demo Day.
Thank you for having me. I'm very glad to be here, Sean.
Awesome. So Ben and I met each other first at your podcast. You run a podcast called Chancebending, as well as run your own venture studio through Chancebending. Really, really excited for anyone that wants to check out an amazing podcast following other business leaders. Go give Chancebending a look. It really was an enjoyable experience for me. I wanted to get this podcast started off somewhere in the middle of your life and your career. If you look at sort of your LinkedIn, your resume, you'll see that you have jobs spanning from YouTube and Google. You have worked for Fullscreen. You've started your own video business. A lot of what you do centers around the evolution of video. And I was really curious, why is video so important to you? And at what age did you decide, I'm going to be in this niche, I'm going to spend more time learning about video?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that for most young entrepreneurs, you typically are in your middle to late 20s generally when you get started. And for me, that was around 2004, 5, 6. And at that moment, that's really when the video ecosystem was starting to happen. Video could happen on the internet, which it just hadn't happened before. So I was pretty entrepreneurial my whole life, but I really saw an opportunity, a wave at that moment. And I had talked my way into Google back when it was a small 1,000-person company. And they were sort of looking around saying, well, who do we have that might know some of the video stuff as it starts to happen? And I had started a video production company in Hong Kong and Singapore before I was at Google, but it was more just have fun, travel, do things. And but I talked my way into video for Google very quickly, was part of the team that acquired YouTube. And before I knew it, I was in the middle of something really, really big. So as far as advice, I really try to tell entrepreneurs, look for those giant waves and then just hop on,
One of the things that's been awesome in learning more about you is you seem to always be tied into the quote unquote wave. When we first met, you were already moving into Alexa and voice and being one of the pioneers in that space. Do you feel that voice is the next wave of video, or how do you feel about voice as it compares, to the different mediums that we could be using?
Yeah, I mean, I think finding those opportunities is so vital, and you never know how they will turn out. I was involved with the VR movement back in 2015 and 16, and that has not had the same impact that perhaps something like video has. And that's the part of finding trends and finding waves. Some are going to be big, some are going to be small, some are going to look really nice. It's just like surfing. And I think with Alexa and voice, I think you really do have an amazing opportunity here. I don't know if it exactly looks like video. Video it's so natural. we can't take our eyes off a laptop when you're sitting on an airplane. You're just forced to look at a video screen. It's very natural. It monetizes well. With voice, we're not at that moment yet. But I think with voice, the stat that really jumped out at me is that on Google, I think something like, don't quote me on this, but I think it's something like over 40% of searches are now, or maybe much higher, are now voice activated.
Wow.
And that's through mobile, right? That number jumps out at me. So when I hear stats like that, as an entrepreneur, like I'm just trained, like I've trained my brain to go out. And when I hear that stuff, I just like my first automatic thought is, okay, how am I going to play this? What am I going to do? How do I get involved? And in the case of the voice stuff, I ended up creating one of the larger voice communities online called Voice Entrepreneur, solely. And the voice entrepreneur community was really about marketing and how to actually, the business of voice. There are a lot of like voice technology brands out there, but no one was talking about how to make money from this stuff. So I just went out and did it. And I didn't know how I was going to make money from it, but I just went out and did it. And I really encourage entrepreneurs. Like I've just made, like you said, out of the last 15, 20 years, if I find something interesting, if I find it intellectually interesting, if I think it's a wave, I just jump on it.
You don't allow the fear of, oh, I'm not going to be good enough, or, oh, this isn't going to work. You're able to push that aside and allow yourself to dabble in these different markets as long as you feel excited about it. And I think that's something that's really crucial. Is a lot of entrepreneurs, I feel, sometimes will follow the money, whereas what you really want to is follow your passion, follow the thing that really brings you alive. And if you can turn that into a monetary, stream, do you feel the same way around focusing on passion, or do you have a different insight?
I think for me, I want to feel like it's something interesting and intellectually stimulating. And then my whole strategy is I don't hesitate to just call people. And so I'll find, I would, tooting my own horn here. I feel like I'm pretty good at getting on Twitter. I'm still a voracious RSS feed person because I don't want to miss stuff. And so I find the smartest people in a industry, and then I stalk the crap out of people, and then I befriend them. I get to know them. I understand the best ideas. I offer them help. I offer them value. And before you know it, you're in an ecosystem. I don't worry about the money. What I worry about is finding the smartest people and then seeing if, like, I equate what we do to like musicians, like jazz musicians. They get together, they play, they jam. And sometimes it's amazing music, sometimes it's not. But I want to find all the jazz musicians wherever I go. So if it's voice, if it's video, if it's VR, that's just what I do. So that's how I look at my own work. I
love the analogy of jazz, because like you said, you can have the best the jazz band, and sometimes it's the best and sometimes it's not the best, but the idea is that they're riffing off of each other and they're going for it. I love that analogy. You had mentioned a little earlier that, most entrepreneurs, not all, but most, start to find themselves in, their 20s or their 30s. When did you find yourself thinking, I'm an entrepreneur, I can do this, or I can pave my own path? Was it at a much younger age, or did you move into entrepreneurship as you got older?
For me, I want to be very clear. I didn't get good grades. I bounced around. I would say that girls were a priority for me for a very long period of time. And I tried to be good at that. And I found myself in a series of relatively boring jobs. And I remember the epiphany I had. I was working in a place in like Cupertino. Like it was like a temp job with like nonprofit insurance. It was like the most boring thing you've ever heard. And I had this realization, like, wait a minute, I think I can do anything I want to do. And I know that sounds it's like, well, of course. But when I had that realization, a week later, I flew to Singapore. I started a video business with a friend of mine in Singapore. And that was the lesson to me, that I could just invent anything I want to do. And once I finally learned it, like I'm still doing it. I currently am investing in startups through SPVs. I'm doing interesting new stuff. I'm just constantly saying, like, I can just go do this, can I? So it's been great for me. Constantly
recreating yourself, recreating what you want to be doing. Is that the way you're seeing it?
Yeah, man. Like I don't know. Like, I think an entrepreneur can be anything. So I don't need to label myself in any way. Like, I just go after things. I've stopped being embarrassed and stop caring about what people think. And I'm like, you know what? I think an entrepreneur can be interested in voice and create a voice community and then jump and do something completely different. I work with a number of NBA athletes. I do a whole bunch of different things. That's me. And I feel so happy about that. I've really found myself through the work. I encourage entrepreneurs, like, you learn through activity. You don't learn through analysis. You learn through activity. So I encourage people to get out there, start talking to people. Whenever I'm in just a total like slump, I start calling people. And when I call people and I start talking to people, like, before you know, in like 2 or 3 days, like, things are happening. I love that. I just love it.
What advice do you have? Because I think there's something you just said that's so crucial around when you're in a slump. How do you get out of that slump? And I think, on one angle, there's this negativity, right? So if you're in a slump and you're talking to your best bud, you want, right, that misery loves company. You want to almost spread that negativity. How do you do it in a positive way? How do you take a slump that you're in and connecting with people and turn it into something that's positive, as opposed to just bringing all of these people down with you?
Yeah, I mean, I've like any entrepreneur, entrepreneuring is a lonely profession. You can find yourself in a bad place. There's a lot of highs, a lot of lows. And like a month ago, I was just like, man, nothing's working right now. I'm like bummed out. Like, a couple of deals I was working on weren't working. It's like, man, am I really good? Like, am I just BS? Right? And I actually encourage people. My advice, I take my own advice now. I call or email or contact 5 new people a day. So I'm not talking about calling my like best friend and connecting. I'm talking about finding new people. It's a really interesting process, because what you have to do is ultimately sell yourself to someone new and give them value and give. And when you start giving, like, the whole world works by giving first. When you start giving, you get right back on track. And you're like, yeah, I am valuable. Like, what I'm doing is valuable. I am doing what I thought I'm doing. And before you know it, you're back on track. You're killing it. And you're like, the best advice, just stop stopping. Stop. You just, whatever you do, just don't stop.
Bring us back into early life. So Did you grow up in Los Angeles, or it sounds a lot of your story has been around up north? Where'd you grow up?
Yeah, I'm the son of my parents. My dad was an economics professor, an antique dealer, and my mom is a law professor. So we moved around to a lot of university towns. So I got used to selling myself. Moved around to, I don't know, 3 or 4 or 5 schools. And I had to learn how to fit in with a whole bunch of different people. That was really, really valuable for me as a salesperson. I lived in Vermont. I lived in Arizona. I lived in Champaign, Urbana, Illinois. I moved around a lot, and I just learned how to get by. I was smart enough. Well, my sister was smart. My sister went to Stanford. When I was in Asia and I was running that company, she's like, hey, Ben, why don't you come here, hang out for a little bit? I came. She had a friend who was very early employed, very, very early at Google. She's like, he got a job. If he got a job there, maybe you can. And I was very egotistical. And I was like, Google would be lucky to have me, this little crappy company. And and Sheryl Sandberg, David Fisher were people I worked for. And it's like, before I knew it, I was like, oh, like, this is a big wave.
Sheryl Sandberg from Facebook.
Yeah.
Used to be at Google.
Yeah, back in the day. I mean, that's how. She did a number of interesting things, but what she did at Google was pretty amazing, actually.
What was, I'm super curious myself. What was Google like, 15, 20 years ago? You had said it's this, a little small company. Did it have even close to the breadth that it did today, or back then was it just another startup?
Well, yeah, it was obviously, there was a lot of fanfare. It had raised a lot of money. People understood what it was going to be when I joined. I joined in some like early mid 2003. The entire company had just got a deal to put their ads into the AOL search results, and that was like the biggest deal in the company's history. So it was an exciting time because we knew that something was happening and it was big, but there was still just so much growth. And I think it's an amazing place because there were so many young, smart people just killing each other internally. Like, the credit I give Sheryl Sandberg is she knows how to create internally a place where employees scratch and claw each other to get the best out of each other. It's competition. It's tough. She creates that. It's just an amazing environment, though, because people are just working their butts off.
When I've read books on Google and they used to talk about, the long interview processes, hours and hours. Yep. Do you remember having an experience that was memorable, or did you have such a confidence about you that you were able almost to niche your own path into Google?
Well, I really want to stress to people, to be clear, the year before, I was a drifter, man. I think I worked at Starbucks at an unusually high age. I got turned down from Taco Bell. Taco Bell turned me down, to be clear, and I talked my way into Google. I knew what they were looking for. I got really lucky in that Cheryl was sick the day. You have to do 6 interviews. Cheryl was sick that day, and I got Adam Freed. If Adam happens to listen to this, Adam, no offense to you, but you're an easier interview than Sheryl Sandberg. And so I felt like I just had a good one with Adam. And I understood what they were going for from a team perspective and from a people perspective, because I had learned to listen as a kid. And I think that anybody can get into one of these great companies if they learn how to listen to people. And I know that's tried advice, but you have to listen to people. You have to understand how to help people and how to be a team. And if you're truly team first, you can go amazingly far. I found myself, I didn't go to a fancy school. I worked at Starbucks when I was 26 or something like that for 5 weeks. Taco Bell didn't want me.
Highest paid. You had the most tips of everyone in Starbucks.
Yeah, but that will just take you incredibly far. Yeah.
When you were at YouTube and Google and just in that world, was the idea of entrepreneurship kind of running around your brain, or did it come later on? When did you start thinking to yourself, I kind of want to do my own thing? I don't necessarily want to keep going down this path.
Yeah, I was lucky. YouTube and Google at that time were very entrepreneurial. We were very small companies. I was one of 25 people in the early days of YouTube. It was entrepreneurial, so I could do whatever I wanted. The feeling back then was, we'll allow you to do anything. We'll say yes to anything until we have to say no. And now I think it's the opposite, right? It's we say no until we have to say yes. So I got to work on crazy stuff. I was trying to put together the first live stream video on YouTube, which was going to be, this is crazy, I haven't said this before. I was going to get Mike Tyson to battle Kimbo Slice, who was a big deal for
legend.
that 3 or 4 month period. And I got both parties to be yeah, we'll do this. And that night, Kimbo had he got beat by the guy he was supposed to fight couldn't make it, and they pulled the guy who was selling ice cream, and that guy beat Kimbo Slice
in the UFC. You're talking about? Yeah, I remember that.
And so it was the most embarrassing. It was basically Kimbo Slice is a viral fraud. Yeah. Because he was one of the first virals. And they're this guy's totally fraudulent.
Right. Backyard fight videos getting absolutely worked by the ice cream guy.
Yes. And so I had to go it was the worst day ever at the YouTube, because I had to go in the next day and we never talked about the deal ever again. It just disappeared internally. The Kimbo guys called me and they're we still have the deal, right? I'm guys, I'm not even... I gotta go.
It's crazy how boxing, the celebrity boxing world is a thing now, where they take these influencers on YouTube and pit them up. That seems to be pulling. But I really do feel the nostalgia around Mike Tyson and Kimbo. That'd be the biggest live stream event.
It would have been crazy. It would have been crazy.
So knowing that you day to day felt entrepreneurial and that you had the support from a real great team and system, what was the sort of, whether it would be the straw that broke the camel's back or the conversation that you had with a peer or future partner that got you to take that next step and really start your own business?
I would say it was this wave thing that I was talking about. I knew I had this, YouTube sent me down. I was the first YouTube business person in Los Angeles. They sent me down. I opened it up. YouTube technically was my apartment for a week or two down here in Los Angeles. And I saw a couple of waves. The first was that online video needed to, that the home was really Los Angeles instead of Silicon Valley, I saw that way before other people. So I was like, wait a minute, I'm really valuable down here. This is interesting. The second insight was really to credit my old work partner, a guy named George Trompoulos, who founded Fullscreen. George, we didn't have the word influencer at that point, but we knew from our work at YouTube, we're like, George is like, hey, Ben, like, these people making videos, they can sell the crap out of stuff. They're selling more stuff like than any sort of celebrity can typically sell. And so with that idea, we're like, holy moly, we have an insight. We have a secret. We know something that other people don't know. And you have to understand at this point in time, this is like 2009. Yeah, like 2009, maybe 2010. Like I went with him to a couple of meetings in places like CAA, and they were like, you know what, we have Oliver Stone, and Oliver Stone may do this for the platform and may do this. And we're like, we don't care about Oliver Stone. Oliver Stone is not important on the internet. He's not important on YouTube. Right. No offense to Oliver, but he's not what we're talking about.
He's not culture. He's not
going to sell stuff. Like, and we're still, I mean, if anything, I still think we're underestimating what influencers can do and sell product and how everything has changed, just because we have so much existing structure, especially here in Los Angeles, that we're still working through. It's like all the old stuff is still in place.
Yeah, I think influencers are really interesting because I think that everyone is searching for the scalable way to work with influencers. Oh, let's tap into a network that then has all of these. But really, I feel like the best influencer deals happen behind the scenes, happen through business development and relationships and adding value, finding ways to add value to their audience. I think to your point, it's a market that, while still is tapped for sure, there's still a lot of opportunity left in the deal making portion and how they're able to build those relationships. When you left YouTube and you left Google and you started your own business, what were some of the learnings or the takeaways that you brought from a bigger organization, maybe not huge, that you were able to bring into your first couple of months of running your business?
Yeah, so I knew I had helped George get Fullscreen off the ground when it was just a couple of guys in his living room. And there was an excitement, and it was like, wow, like I said, I could do anything. I knew that analytics on the YouTube platform were terrible. And at the time, a company called Buddy Media had just sold, and it was like, wait a minute, SaaS. I'm not even sure we used the word SaaS at that moment either, but we're like, reoccurring revenue could be so badass. Let's create a company called Blaze. Let's do analytics. Let's have reoccurring revenue. And in some sense, we thought we were competing against the early days of Fullscreen and Zephyr and Maker Studios, because we're like, you know what, we're going to win. We're going to be like Buddy Media. And with that sort of idea and that sort of excitement, that's when I started saying, wait a minute, maybe I should raise some money. Maybe I should think about an accelerator. Maybe I'm going to make a go out of this.
So knowing what you do now and kind of rewinding yourself back to that moment, a lot of people listening to this show are sort of at that exact moment right now where they're trying to decide, is now the time to raise money or should I wait? Do you have any point of view or suggestion for any entrepreneur thinking about raising money? What's a couple questions that you may suggest they think about?
Yeah, I definitely went into it not knowing as much as I probably should, but I think that's the way it works for most young founders. I think that it's important to understand who you are, where you are, and what you want to do. And in my time as a founder, my time spending time with founders on all sides of the table, the ones that have the most definitive vision, meaning they know what they want to do, they typically are the companies that do the best over time. It's the young founders who start listening to people over here on their left. They start listening to the investors. They start listening to, I don't know, you and me. They just listen to everybody, and they get blown by the wind a little bit, and they're not quite sure what they want to see happen. I think raising money is so incredible because it accelerates growth. But if you don't know where you're growing and you don't have a real vision, it can be pretty scary. Now, within that, of course, you're going to move a few degrees left, a few degrees right. But I mean, fundamentally, what do you want to be? I'm dealing with a company right now. I'm leading around funding into this company, and it's like, how big is your vision? How small is your vision? If what I say influences you, that's a bad sign. Like, I don't like that. So I think founders that really understand what they want to be and they don't care about what anybody else says, that's such a great sign.
Why do you believe it's so important to have that conviction? Because we live now in a world where so much is changing and so much is, everything is evolving. Having been on both sides of the table, why do you believe vision is so important for early stage founders?
I believe, look, what you're doing is a serious endeavor as a founder. And it involves people's lives. And I think that people forget that. And it's a serious thing. I don't like owing someone a slice of pizza. I feel bad. Raising money, raising millions of dollars, it's not just like, hey, we're going to raise some money and we'll see what happens. And typically that is the attitude that most founders have. They take it very, very loosely. That's not really how it works.
Yeah, I was talking to Anthony, who runs Quake LA, and I asked him kind of a philosophical question, like, do you think that all of these people asking to raise money would raise money or ask to raise money if they knew they had to pay it back? There was no getting around the bush. We're like, would they still be running with that idea? And he kind of laughed and said, I don't know. I don't think so, right? Because I think a lot of people forget that you are taking you are asking for someone else's money, not putting it up yourself. So I always found that to be very interesting.
Yeah, it's the first thing I say. I've spoken at a number of universities like USC and many others, and the first thing I say is please don't use fundraising as validation. You would be surprised. I acted as a VC for about a year. I found it wasn't for me, but when I was a VC, oh my gosh, we were seeing 40 people a week come in, and so many of them, it was so clear that they just wanted to be called smart by somebody. And they just wanted someone to say, basically act like their mom and dad and be like, you know what? You are smart. You are good. You did it. And it's that's not the point of fundraising.
Yeah.
And it's just amazing how much that phenomenon. And also founders in this culture have just thought that the milestone is fundraising. It's no, we're very far off from that.
Did you always know, I know that you didn't have a ton of research, but did you always know that Mucker was the team that you wanted to join, or did it come serendipitously, or was it through some learning or experience where you decided that was the right place to land?
Yeah, it was different days here, even though it was 2012. Silicon Beach and Los Angeles were really just getting started. They were starting to accelerate. I had heard about Will Su. I heard he was a smart guy. I wanted to connect with him, and I really wanted, especially at that time, I wanted people that had fought battles before in ways that I had not. Now, I knew from a business sense, from what we were doing with YouTube and analytics, we would be all right. But from a funding and financial perspective, I didn't have experience. And so I was really attracted to Will in that he was very matter of fact, straightforward, and helped me think through the right way of funding my company, financing my company. And I needed that. So when I met with him, it was like, wow, this guy is super whip smart and he knows that. So for me, it was a no-brainer.
What stage of Blaze were you at? Are these first days, first month, first year? Where were you when you first entered?
I think we were about 7 or 8 months in. I had just attracted a CTO, which is a big thing as a non technical founder. I had attracted a proven CTO. I had some young guys. We had some initial customers, but we didn't have revenue, but we had some initial customers. And Will was like, yeah, man, we'll work with you. And I was excited because especially at that moment, I think that I was in their second class. Yeah, I think their second class. And it was like every single one of their companies in the first class raised a boatload of money, did all the right stuff. And I was like, you know what? These guys have a flawless track record. I'm going to work with them and learn.
When, in hindsight, knowing that Mucker has, I don't necessarily know if they've changed, but certainly I would imagine they've changed some over the last several years. what were the benefits that you saw coming out of the Mucker Lab program or out of an accelerator? And I guess thinking about it from the context of from someone that's never even heard of an incubator or an accelerator, why would they want to join something like that?
Yeah, I think that with accelerators and incubators, they're pretty great in teaching you the pace that companies move, that good startups move.
Talk to us more about the pace.
You have to move fast, right? And you're moving generally on like a weekly scale, and you're like, man, we've got to grow every single week. That is the right pace, and that sort of hustle is required, 100%. If you don't know that, you're gonna get your ass kicked.
If you don't know that, you it ain't right for you.
Immediately. So I think that's like one of the very first things you learn going in there. The relentless focus on growth is excellent. I know Y Combinator is very big on that. I pound my table on that. I think that their help, it wasn't like they really helped in terms of like fundraising introductions, but they helped me think through how to approach fundraising conversations. And that was important for me. There's a game, there's like
the story.
There's a science, not a science, but like there's something going on where like you need to know the language, the inside language. It's not like, like everyone compares it to dating and like playing hard to get and so forth. Yeah, it's that way, but like you just need to understand subtle signals, subtle things going on. And if I hadn't joined the accelerator, I'm not sure I would have been smart enough to pick up on those things early on. That's really valuable in an accelerator.
Yeah, we had Eric Netsch, who's the founder of TapCard, and he talked about the concept of doing, all of these pitches when you're pitching these investors. A lot of people don't think about the value that you get from having some of the smartest people in the world over and over and over again help you craft your story, your narrative, give you those notes. A lot of people are like, man, like their ego is just battered down because they've gotten said no to. But I think that there's such an opportunity. Like, what other job in your life do you have where you get the best in that industry kind of critiquing you, giving you notes? And I think that that process, certainly the microcosms or the small details like you're mentioning of just how do you talk in a way that helps to push you down the field is incredibly beneficial.
Yeah, I remember when I was at Mucker Lab, I think I did my demo day pitch because they had a demo day at that point. I think I did it something like 28 days in a row in front of at least 15 people each time. Like, where else are you going to get that? That's pretty awesome.
If you were to do it all over again, you're still quote unquote, if you were still running your business and you were to do it all over again, would you have done it the exact same way at Mucker, or are there different ways maybe you would have switched it up?
Where I think it like wasn't quite as strong, and it's no fault really of Mucker, but in general, is that navigating all of these, and it's funny because I sort of am one, navigating all of these advisor types, that's one of the worst distractions to startups and founders, and understanding who's actually helpful, who's actually preying on your company. I dealt with far too many advisors who are actually trying to hurt the company instead of help the company.
In the form of
wanting to get on the cap table, wanting to wheel and deal, wanting to maneuver, take employees, take ideas, move things over. Like, I've seen it all, and I saw it all through Blaze. I used to think when I came into the accelerator, I used to think that the CEO was the high man on the totem pole. I found out through that program the CEO is probably on the middle, maybe a little bit lower than the middle of the totem pole. There's investors, there's people, they're like very high up that are high up in companies that are moving you around, and understanding that you're not as high as you think you are is a really, really good lesson to learn. I worry that so many young startups don't have the skills to navigate these advisor types. And that's one thing that I actually would love to bring to an accelerator is like, don't listen to people like me. Watch out for people like me. Understand where you're spending all this time. I mean, I remember at Mucker, I'd get a phone call and be like, hey, Will, hey, Eric, this guy at name some cool company, he's interested in what we're doing, And it's like, I actually needed to tell that guy, like, get away from me. Like, don't even come near my company. Don't distract me. Don't take an hour of my time. Don't have coffee with me. Don't distract me with other introductions. That's the worst. You're getting introductions to introductions to introductions. Like, I don't need those people. What I need to focus on is growth.
Why, and maybe why is the wrong question, but why are you so passionate around focus, around distraction? Why are these two, kind of elements from the same coin are so important to the success of an early stage startup?
It's pure. I mean, speed and time is like your asset as a startup, and that's the only way you're going to win. And I just don't think most people understand what a distraction most stuff is. And it can be so tempting to see these interesting people in high up places start to give you phone calls, and you think, well, maybe they'll lead to funding, or maybe that will lead to some incredible partnership. And it's like, no, like, you need to actually grow your business. And that skill, like, that's where I think first-time founders actually really fail. I think
time management,
they're terrible. They're terrible. They take way too many of these coffee meetings, way too many. Second-time founders, I'm a pro. Like, at this point, I know how to, I ignore people. I get rid of people. I know how not to say I'm having coffee. I'm just good at it. And that's the biggest difference in my experience, between first-time founders and more experienced founders.
Yeah, I think that one of the elements of running a business, or just being on a high-performing team, that you don't think about, or typically you've never been taught, is around the concept of a switching cost. When you are mentally like in your zone, in your element, and you're like, oh shit, I've got to jump into this coffee. Now you're in a different sort of a sales element. And then if you have to go back into coding, and so when you are just stacking your day with all of these distractions, you're not even considering that there's even more cost associated to switching between the different tasks.
I know it's a crazy example. Our credit card, my wife and I, we got something in the mail. The credit card's like, we want to send you 12 free magazines. My wife's like, oh, let's pick out some magazines. I'm like, no. I'm like, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that.
It's a distraction.
Do you know how much mail we're going to get, first of all, from other parties? Secondly, do you understand how many of these magazines we're going to have to lift, carry? We're going to have to recycle them. I know it sounds so small and tiny, but it was like, I don't want to deal with 12 magazines times all of that mail, times all of that recycling, times I was like, that's a distraction.
Outside of that key learning, because I think it's a phenomenal learning, what was something that you learned coming out of Mucker or coming out of any VC program that you weren't expecting?
What I wasn't expecting was sort of twofold. One was that you're not nearly as important as you think you are. And you see that because you're around other startups, and like, that's both good and bad. Like, it's nice to be in the trenches with other startups, and you do get some camaraderie. But on the other hand, you see that, like, man, you're not doing anything cool. You're not anywhere near where you should be. That's a really good lesson to learn as a startup. So I love when that happens. And I think that it's just a matter of also understanding that, like, with whoever runs the program, you start to see, like, which companies are winning and which ones are losing. And, like, I didn't anticipate. I was like, oh wow, I was jealous. Like, Black Tux was in my my class, and it was like, man, these two guys were just doing, like, tuxedos, and it was like sort of a joke almost in the office. And I was like, wait a minute, these guys are kicking your ass. Like, wait a minute, these guys have a really good business. And then, like, Will and Eric had them go first in the demo day and stuff. It's like, oh shit, the Black Tux is a big deal. And even now it's like, wow, this company is like,
they made it.
They made it. Understanding that is really, really valuable. So I'm very grateful for all of those experiences.
I think for me, it's been truly around how hard it is to run a sustainable business. I mean, I was in the Mucker class either right before you or right after you with InstaCanvas, and whether it's InstaCanvas or Laughster or what's the company that did Surf Air, or Washio or Laurel and Wolf, or I mean, there have been so many companies that over the last 10 years I've admired and looked up to, and the teams are incredible, the mission's incredible, everything, like, all the things are going for them, but it's fucking hard to run a sustainable business that's paying everyone their profits and making it. And it's just been this learning that even the best, even the number one on the demo day reel, even those guys can get knocked out at 8 years in, 12 years in, 50. It's just insane to run a sustainably long business.
It's wild. It's wild. And like, that's why I like that jazz musician analogy. It's like, man, you gotta like playing music. You have to like playing music, and then it's like, enjoy the jam, enjoy the process, because that's ultimately what you're doing.
Let's talk about leadership. When you mentor and advise startups, mainly CEOs, what are the sorts of tips that you give to running a really smooth or high functioning team?
Yeah, generally I'm working with CEOs in helping them prioritize for the most part. I mean, it's like we were saying, sort of time management, but that doesn't make it sound right. It's really like understanding what drives revenue, how to create a team, how to create structure, how to make people work for you instead of against you. And CEOs oftentimes, especially first time CEOs, they get distracted. They start feeling like something is really important. It's like, let me tell you what's important. Fundraising is important. Revenue and sales and deals are important, and people are important. That's it. And it's amazing how many things distract people. So I typically help founders with that. I really help them figure out what the key generally they're dominoes in businesses. It's like, if you get one, then you're going to get a whole bunch of them. Sometimes that's really hard to see. I work with a startup called Bonsai in Toronto, and it's terrific. They do shoppable commerce, and terrific very young CEO. And for him, it was just a matter of like working with him and figuring out what was important. And it was like, look, is A, B, or C going to make your business work? And he was like, well, they're all important. It's like, well, let's go through this. And by the time we were finished, we're like, whoa, it's A. A is the thing we have to do. And if you can do that over and over and over again, it just creates magnificent results. They've raised a ton of money. They're making it. I mean, I can't talk about the deal that we're just closing, but we created a monster partnership that's a big multi-8-digit deal. It's just awesome. And it's like, that's through the hard work of prioritizing and making things work and learning the art of the deal.
Did you always or ever have a mentor growing up? You said before you moved to Singapore, there was almost like a voice in your head that was like, I can do this. Was that driven by yourself and moving around a lot as a kid, or did it have to do with someone, whether it be family or a mentor that sort of helped give you that push?
I wish I had a mentor, and it's one of the things that really bugs me. And very honestly, like, my dad wasn't as much as I probably would have liked. For me, I found it through reading. I'm a voracious reader. I spent a large part of my 20s. This is embarrassing. I've never said this, but I spent a large part of my 20s in the Borders bookstore in downtown Palo Alto, reading almost every night. Even when I was at Google in the first year or two, that's what I did. And
what were you looking for?
I read everything, man. I'm a crazy reader. I've read every business book in the Borders bookstore, probably times like 10, just to get one nugget, one thing. I was obsessed with learning, and I just knew that like down the road it would come in handy, and that's what I credit. Like, I still have that. I wake up at 5 a.m. every morning, and it's just like, get me. I need to read. I have to read.
Anna Barber, who's the managing director at Techstars LA, said that the number one skill an entrepreneur can have is the ability to know how to learn. Do you agree with that statement, or do you have a different take on it?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I agree on like a macro level. I think life is effectively just learning, right? As human beings, like, we're algorithms that keep learning stuff. So I agree in that sense. I think that. Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I think human beings, like, learning through other people and understanding communication and listening. It's like, I can't say it enough. It's like, I thought I was a good listener, and then I found out I was a shitty listener, mostly through relationship.
My wife.
Yeah, mostly through well, actually, not my wife. It's like bad girlfriends where like things fell apart, and I had a nasty one when I was like 35, and I was like, wait a minute. Like, people were always like, oh, Ben, you're such a good talker and listener. And I was like, I thought it was like Sherlock Holmes, and it was like, wait a minute, how did I miss all this stuff? And I was like, maybe I'm not listening as much as I thought I was. And when I really started to take that sort of stuff seriously, it's funny, it was like all relationship stuff. I basically studied modern relationship theory this sounds crazy, but like I told you, I'm pretty obsessive about reading. Like for 6 months, I was reading like 4 hours a night on relationship theory stuff, mostly to get over the breakup. But when I did that, I was like, oh my God, my business life exploded because it's the same skills. It's the exact same skills of listening, picking up on stuff, making people feel safe. It's crazy.
Damn.
There's a guy named Al Turtle. This is so embarrassing. I can't believe I'm saying this, but there's a guy named Al Turtle on the internet. He's like 70 years old. He has a whole bunch of free essays online. And I studied Al Turtle like it was like the Bible. And Al Turtle changed my life. I mean, I really mean that. So if you're curious, check out Al Turtle online. He doesn't sell anything. I mean, I don't think he sells anything, at least, but it's just read. Any
other books that ring a bell? Again, let's think about the 20 to 30-year-old entrepreneur that's jumping into the bookstore, if they have a bookstore. Anything that sticks out to you as like the must-have should be in anyone's bookshelf?
Yeah, I mean, it's a popular one, but the hard thing about hard things is just like it's an amazing book because it like shows you that this stuff is brutal and hard, and like you have to be ready for it. I think that Shoe Dog is similarly. Both of those get mentioned a lot. Those are such good books. But then on a different level, there's he's a little bit of I shouldn't say this, but he's a little bit of a cheesy entrepreneur. But there's a guy out there. He's more of like a direct market entrepreneur guru type named Russell Brunson. Russell Brunson has
ClickFunnels, right?
Yeah, he has a fantastic 2 books right now, but a third's about to come out. Those books are so good. They're so clear on how to build a sales funnel, how to actually create copy and like make it all work on the internet today. So if you're out there, if you're like, you want to be a guru or you want to have an Instagram following or whatever you want to do, check out those books because they really are excellent. And he's not overtly selly in them, like trying to make you buy stuff, but he'll definitely make you try to buy stuff if you look for him online. So
I think a lot of, what's amazing about the accelerator, the incubator, startups in general is just the community, right? And I know for you, community has been a huge portion of your day-to-day. You say you are trying to outreach to 5-10 new people every single day. What is Chancebending from either the podcast side or the venture side? And what's the dream? When you kind of look into the future, what is the podcast and what are you hoping to gain out of it?
Yeah, I mean, my sense is... my brand is called Chancebending. When your name is Ben Smith, you basically have to come up with something. Like it's so generic, it's so crazy. So you need to come up with something. And my thing is called Chancebending. And Chancebending is really this idea of bending the odds to make them work for you. And for entrepreneurs, for everyone in life, like that's a really valuable thing to like create your own conscious path and deliberate path to success. So what I think of myself doing is like I'm helping entrepreneurs. I coach entrepreneurs. I coach businesses. I help with sales. I invest in companies. I'm basically just trying to make a difference and bend chance with entrepreneurs. Like I said, I'm not putting a category on it, but like I'm doing things in all elements. Like I feel like I'm a guy who can invest in companies, but I can also sell consulting. I can also write stuff. I can also talk about stuff. I can do all of the above, and I'm not worried right now about what that's called. And I found that makes me a little bit of a rarity.
Yeah. What are you most excited about right now? Whether it's business or outside of business, what's getting you fired up each week, and anything that you'd like to tell the viewers about?
Just think it's an amazing time right now. You can go out, we could create a business right now in less than an hour right here at this table, and we should film an episode like that.
I love that.
Yeah, we should. We really should. It's awesome.
It's a great idea.
It's crazy. And the downside to that is when I get contacted by entrepreneurs for either consulting or for investment, it's not good enough just to have a good idea right now. And I think that's where Coefficient Labs comes in. It's like, man, you have to be growing. Like if there's one thing I tell people, it's like, VCs don't like, because I get some people come to me when they want to raise money, basically is what it comes down to. When they come to me, I'm like, guess what, guys? You don't raise money on a good idea. You raise money on growth. It's like you don't raise money on the car. You raise money on how fast the car is going. And we argue as investors basically on if we agree on how fast the car is going, but we don't argue about the car. And it's like, oh, that's what's going on here. So I'm excited when I see young businesses that are really focused on growth. And I think you can just go like right now, there's a million different things you can do. I've built an Amazon business. You can like Shopify is just an amazing story. I'm excited about like where everything is going right now I'm actually, while I'm not excited about VR, I think there's so many interesting things going on with events like this whole marshmallow thing in Fortnite is so exciting. This idea, I think, there's something like...
You're talking about like having a music festival in the Fortnite game or something like that, right? Where there was like people gathering.
Yeah, but like the concept of an avatar over the next year or two, it's really changing. I'm also really, really excited from a live stream sense. People don't mind spending money now with doctors and athletic trainers. And like, this is what you're seeing with Peloton. This is what you're seeing with all of these medical people spend money in a live stream with someone they've never met. This is a new phenomenon over the last year and a half where people feel okay. I'm old. I've lived through when people didn't want to give a credit card to Amazon, to make it clear. But we're at that moment right now with live stream. So everything is open with live stream. I'm so excited. Like, I could spend money to learn from somebody through live stream in any field. And we're seeing so many different industries and fields where that's starting to happen. It's such a big moment. So I'm looking for that. I'm investing in that. I'm finding different industries and fields where that's happening right now. It's like, it's genius.
Ben, for those entrepreneurs or VCs or LPs listening to this that want to get in touch with you and want to connect, what's the best way? What are the socials?
Yeah, so you can go to bensmith.tv on the internet. That's my website, www.bensmith.tv. We're doing a new cool thing. I created this quiz called the Entrepreneur Credit Score Quiz.
Okay.
Because basically I want entrepreneurs to know like where they are. And so you actually can it's short, it's a few minutes, but then we give you a credit score and we're like, this is like what type of entrepreneur you are, like how good you are. So you can come check that out. It's just like something we're doing for fun.
Cool.
And yeah, I'm not that hard to find. Find me on LinkedIn or Twitter. Yeah, you know the deal.
Beautiful. Ben, thank you so much for coming on this episode of Demo Day. I'm Sean Goldfaden, your host. This is Demo Day.
Thank you, Sean.
Peace.
I stress this with all of our founders. The mental health component of being a founder is so vital.